What's going on, world? Welcome, family. Let's get straight into it. Let's talk about this Marvin Winans situation again, but this time Bishop Patrick Wooden responds to this viral moment. Everybody's been talking about it, and let's be honest, there are some content creators who are just looking for something to say about the church. But let me say this really quick. I respect order in the church. I respect bishops, apostles, pastors. I respect them. I really do. But let's be real. I've grown up in a Pentecostal movement my entire life. I have a Kojic background in Pentecostal uh, associated, right, and even in with apostolic associations or organizations. I wanted to point out something though, that in these circles they operate like we're still under the old covenant, right? They treat pastors like Old Testament prophets and priests as if the people can't hear from the Lord ourselves. And it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. Even at me as a pastor, I make sure that I do not lead in that same kind of that same mindset, that same mind frame. But let's take a look at what Bishop Wooden is talking about. Let's see if he's on. I like Bishop Wooden, but let's see what he's talking about.
Of late, all over the internet, everybody's been talking about Bishop Marvin Winans and how Bishop Winans was, how he treated one of the members. It was a giving day, and they were raising an offering. They wasn't raising an offering for him; they were raising an offering for his church to finish the house of God that God has given him to build. He's not the first builder who has run into problems while they were rebuilding Solomon's temple. The construction of the temple was halted for 16 years, and God raised up Haggai and other men of God to preach and to encourage the people, the prophet Zechariah and others, to encourage the people to rebuild the house.
And right there, that's kind of what I'm talking about. What he's saying is true, but it's Old Testament, and it was necessary because this is where the presence of the Lord dwelled at that time, right? So it makes sense. It makes sense that they run into these issues because there were moral issues that were happening. There were a lot of things that were happening with the people, right? With the people who were called to do what they were doing. In the Old Testament, God spoke through prophets and priests. The people didn't have direct access, right? So he chose people like Moses, Elijah, Elisha, right? The people didn't have direct access. Only Moses went up to the mountain. Only the high priest entered the most holy place once a year, according to Exodus chapter 20, verse 19, even in Leviticus chapter 16. That's why the temple and the priesthood were central. They were mediators. They were called to be much cleaner than the people. And back then, if you wanted to hear from God, you had to go through Moses. But that was only temporary until we got our new high priest. Let's shift to the New Testament real quick. The New Testament, Jesus is our high priest. He is the only mediator between God and man, according to 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 5. And here's the key. Every believer is now part of the royal priesthood, a holy nation, right? That means you have direct access to God. The Holy Spirit lives in you. He lives in each and every person that confesses salvation in the Lord Jesus Christ. All right. So I don't want you to think that I don't believe in pastors or the fold. So some people call it fivefold ministry. It's fourfold or fivefold ministry, however you want to count each position. But I still believe in that. I believe in that. And the role of the pastor is to teach and equip the people of God, right? Please don't get it twisted. That's what it's for. We still need structure. According to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11, that's where your fivefold ministry is. That means shepherding, teaching, and guiding, but not controlling, not talking down like a child. Let me rephrase that. Not talking, I went completely blank. Not talking to people like they are a child. Let's keep listening.
And they did. They finished the house, and the Lord blessed. As I listened to some of the things that were said, it occurred to me that some of the bloggers, some of the things that were being said online, they were talking to to Marvin about Marvin. But the truth is, saints, they were talking to all of us. There is a hostility in society today against the church, and people are looking for reasons to criticize the church.
Absolutely, I agree, Bishop Wooden. They are indeed looking for reasons to criticize the church. And my problem with the church is, why give it to them? Why give it to them? Why give them the opportunity to say something? And I said this in the last video that I made concerning the Bishop Winans viral situation, is that it shouldn't have been broadcast anyway. It shouldn't have been broadcast anyway. And me having this dislike for Bishop Winans' attitude and arrogance and this air of arrogance, I believe that the world picked up on it, because although, and I say this with, I've said this with so many other situations, out of all of the things that people do, out of all the things that people accuse people of doing, they'll find one truth and bring out and make everything an entire lie, right? So there is truth to some of what they point out. And a lot of it's due to church hurt. A lot of it's due to a misunderstanding and a misrepresentation of Jesus, and a misrepresentation of Christianity, of the faith in general, to a lot of these people. And so they respond with these videos that hurt the church, these news platforms, YouTube platforms or TikTok, whatever. Every platform, they respond to it the way that they do because of that hurt, right? But I believe it to be true that the church is giving them a reason to say something, and it's valid. I think that it's valid of what they're saying, because a lot of people feel a certain kind of way about it, and I do too, especially the way that he talked to her. That's really my only gripe, but it makes me look at everything else.
If you've seen our response to it, our response showed the whole video, not the little clip, but the entire video, the entire service, and it showed clearly, it's out there, it showed clearly that not only was the lady not embarrassed, but she even came on the news and said, my pastor did not rebuke me.
She did say that. She came on the news, and we saw that. I hope y'all saw that clip. She did say she was not rebuked. I don't believe that she was rebuked. She was just talked to very ugly.
It was a matter of her being in the wrong line.
That is exactly true. It was a matter of her being in the wrong line, and the way that everybody flipped it was as if Bishop Winans was saying that her 1,200 was not enough. And if you watched it, and some content creators, they did. Some people on YouTube, they did show the full context, but context doesn't matter when you've offended. It doesn't even matter. Like, a lot of context went out the window, Bishop Wooden.
And the way he spoke to her, always remember this: members know their pastor.
Hold on, let's run that back.
Not rebuke me, but it was a matter of her being in the wrong line. And the way he spoke to her, always remember this: members know their pastor.
All right, right there. That is one of the main things I want to really address, because this is the reason why what I said in the intro, in the beginning of this video, the reason why I said what I said, because he said their members know the members know their pastor. The members know their pastor. And I find that to be kind of problematic, because it kind of speaks to the tradition of abuse from the pulpit. It kind of speaks to abuse. Why? Because when you talk to grown adults, someone that's probably old enough to be, I don't know, a sibling to him, and you talk to them like a child, it's not a good look, especially when other people hear it. Okay, they know their pastor, but when pastor says something that is out of pocket, and everybody that don't know the pastor feels what he said and hears that air of arrogance in his voice, in his tone, I think there's a problem. I think there's a problem with the pastor. I think there's a problem with you. I understand that frustration can come as being a pastor. Frustration can come, but I can't remember a time where I talked to somebody like that, even if we were raising money. And I don't find the issue in calling out how much they were raising, because again, as I said in the last video, you have to watch the last one and put it into perspective, which a lot of people was not putting into perspective. They're saying that he said it was 1,200 wasn't enough, but really it was based on the line. And you have to think too with them, and it's a building fund situation, which is why I also said that it shouldn't have been streamed. It should have been a members only stream if that's the case. If you got members out of state, out of the country that want to be a part of this moment specifically for the church, the people who would understand, then that's one thing. But you're streaming live, like you asked for this. You literally asked for this. And then the attitude that was had on top of that, it didn't make none of it go by well, right? So it's easy to take and I think that people, so-called church, because I can't really say if these people are really a part of the church or not. But when you hear that attitude, and when you call some and the people on social media calling it a vanity project, maybe it's because they're attaching it to the man and not the overall church, right? I do understand that it is an attack and there is some hostility against the church because the enemy is taking over minds left and right. And that's the reason why we have to preach the gospel and be more willing to preach the gospel and be less concerned about building a new facility and be more concerned about getting outside of the four walls. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with building a church, but saying that God told you to build it is kind of weird today because he dwells in us, right? He dwells in us. But nothing is wrong with building a center, because nobody had anything to say when Pastor John Hanna out in Chicago, I've been to that facility a couple of times. It's a beautiful facility, right? And there's a major testimony behind it, regardless of how you feel about John Henner or not. I believe that was a move of God, how it came about, and he didn't beg anybody to, and nobody said anything about it. Nobody said anything about it, and they've been streaming how that new building came around. I think it's been around for probably about 4 or 5 years now. But it's called the Temple, and it's up the street from their last building that they bought and paid for with cash. And I think that's a blessing, but it goes to show you Pastor Hannah never talked to anybody like that on camera. They didn't have a day of giving, and all of the giving was given, and they finished the project. But again, nobody said anything about Pastor Hannah when he built that facility. But what I will say is that too, that facility was built with the community in mind, right? It was built with the community in mind. And the reason why they call stuff like this vanity projects is because it looks like a preacher's building, right? A preacher's building, less really about God, but a preacher's building. And I can't really speak to whether if it's a vanity project or not. All I can speak to is, why people are saying it, why it makes sense for them to say that, because they are equating the arrogance and the attitude of how he spoke to that woman with the need to have this building. And it doesn't add up. I don't think anybody will have anything to say. That's why I brought up Pastor Hannah, because that facility, New Life Covenant in South Side Chicago, it's a beautiful building. And I don't think it's in the hood. It's not in the rich area. It's not in the rich area, but it's people respect it. And he's done stuff in the city. He's done stuff in the community. You can literally go and see they do stuff in the community. They baptize people at the river. They do like the whole thing. They do it. They do the whole shebang. And that's, I believe, regardless again what people say about them, they're doing ministry. At least they're getting out into the community. And I don't know what Perfecting Church is doing. I don't know it. And I guess a lot of other people don't know it, for them to be able to say these things that they're saying about them. Let's keep going.
They know, if you're a member here, you know me better than visitors know me. You know me better than those who watch me online, because you see me when I'm not in the pulpit.
And one thing I'll say is that he skipped how he talked about them. Preachers know
embarrassed because she even came on the news and said my pastor did not rebuke me. But it was a matter of her being in the wrong line. And the way he spoke to her, always remember this.
See, he skipped the way he spoke to her. That's my problem with Bishop Wooten right here. You skipped it. Bishop, you skipped it. You skipped the way he talked to her. And he said the way he talked to her. See, you got to understand. That's what happens when you don't really want to address it. That was smooth. That was smooth. That was smooth. He didn't really want to talk about how he talked to it. That does not excuse disrespect. It does not excuse disrespect. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17 calls us to respect leaders, right? But those same leaders are commanded to lead with humility, not lordship. And when you talk to people like that, when you take him, it's not a good look. It's just not a good look. So, I mean, he goes on, and I'll end it right here, but he goes on to talk about how he gave or whatever, and fine. And we know Tyler Perry gave as well, and Tyler Perry wanted his name to be called, but I could remember there was, it was some years ago, about 10, 15 years ago, Tyler Perry gave $10,000 in an offering, and Tyler acted like Mr. Perry. Tyler Perry acted like he didn't want Bishop Winans to say anything. And this is when he attended his church after Bishop Winans was in the movie I Could Do Bad All By Myself with Taraji P. Henson. Yeah, I know my movies. And so it's not, their relationship is not something new or shouldn't be shocking. But these types of things is what makes the church look bad to outsiders, and it makes it hard for people like me to build a church and be sincere, you know, and like really want to do well, just be met with a bunch of opposition while people like this get to do it. They'll call it the devil, but really I think it's a wake-up call. I don't think that people making videos about it is wholly the devil. I think there's validity into what everybody is saying, but I just want to say this. The problem with Old Testament thinking, and this is what I'm talking about, this Old Testament leadership and this Old Testament thinking is what it looks like to the outsiders is what's important to me. When leaders act like they alone can hear from God, when people are silenced and treated like they don't matter unless they're holding up the pastor's arms, that's not the spirit of Christ. That's pride. No, that's pride for them to feel like they're the only ones, right? But Jesus said the spirit would be poured out on all flesh. Acts chapter 2, verse 17, sons and daughters, not just bishops, not just overseers, not just pastors. And I'll close with this. The bottom line is we don't need a Moses anymore. We don't need a Moses anymore. We don't need a man to go up the mountain. The veil was torn. Christ is our high priest, and the Spirit lives in each and every believer. Respect your leaders. Yes, absolutely. But what I want to say is leaders, respect the people of God. Respect the people of God. This is what happens. I believe this is what happens when you disrespect the people of God. That's all I got to say. All right, y'all. Till next time, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And also, shout out to the Gospel Chops. This was his video, and I wanted to make sure I give credit to the content creator. The link will be down in the description. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe for the next one. Peace.